The 49ers under Kyle Shanahan have struggled in one major aspect: their offensive line play. Outside of investments in Mike McGlinchey and Trent Williams, San Francisco really hasn't invested too heavily in this position. While there might be some positions you don't need to invest super heavily in, the fact is San Francisco last year once again proved that they need a deeper and stronger offensive line. When you're looking at the Super Bowl, for instance, Jon Feliciano, the starting guard, left the game with an injury. Then his backup came in and missed a crucial block that arguably led to the Niners losing the game. So unsurprisingly, after the Super Bowl, many fans had their eyes set on free agency and who San Francisco would actually add to re-solidify their offensive line. And so far, their biggest addition has to be the tackle from the Raiders, Brandon Parker. So in this video, I wanted to dive deeper into the player and person Brandon Parker is by looking at his athletic profile, his career up to this point, and some of his film to see the player San Francisco is actually getting. Coming in at 6'8", weighing 320 pounds, and having 35-inch arms, Parker has prototypical tackle size. He also doesn't move too bad for his size, running his 40-yard dash in 5.4 seconds and his 10-yard split in 1.83 seconds. And when you're watching him on the field, I do think his athleticism carries over. I think often he's better on the move than anchoring. For example, I think his run game and play action game are much stronger than his traditional pass protection. But to fully understand the player Parker is, we must examine the player he's been up to this point. Brandon Parker was born in Kannapolis, North Carolina on October 21st, 1995, and both of his parents were extremely athletic. His dad played lineman at University of North Carolina, and his mom played basketball there. Brandon's athletic career would follow closely in the steps of his father, where he played offensive tackle at A.L. Brown High School, but he really wasn't recruited too heavily as he was pretty lengthy, being around 6'7" and only 250 pounds. Most schools frankly weren't very interested in developing an offensive lineman. Therefore, despite being dominant his final 2 years of high school, he really didn't receive that many offers, only receiving a handful from Winston-Salem State, North Carolina A&T, North Carolina Central, and a partial offer from University of North Carolina. Ultimately, Parker did decide to go with North Carolina A&T over these other options. As a freshman in 2013, he took the opportunity to redshirt, and this was a great year for him because it allowed him to put on the size necessary to be an effective tackle at the college level. As a result of his work ethic during this freshman year, in 2014, Parker was able to start in all 12 games at the left tackle position and did not allow a single sack on the year. During the 2015 season, he once again started in all 12 games, still not allowing a single sack, but we did notice a noticeable uptick in his strength this year where he averaged 4 pancakes a game. 2016 would be yet again another solid year for Parker, who refused to give up a sack once again, and he started in all 12 games this year as well. As a senior in 2017, you probably already guessed, Parker started in all 12 games and did not allow a single sack on this year, meaning across his entire college career, Brandon Parker did not surrender a single sack. After this 2017 season, he did decide to enter the 2018 draft, and he even attended the Senior Bowl. During this time, scouts decided to dive a little bit deeper into the player Parker was, including his strengths as well as weaknesses. For his strengths, he's exactly what you want size-wise out of a tackle. He comes in at 6'8", and he has 35-inch arms. The length is especially beneficial in pass protection when he's able to lock out his arms, and then it kind of renders the pass rusher's moves useless. Despite his size though, Parker also showed off a unique blend of athleticism where he routinely got to the second level at college. It also definitely didn't hurt Parker's stock that he didn't give up a single sack across his entire college career. But there were also clear weaknesses to his game. Perhaps the most obvious to me that has carried over to the pros is Parker's inability to get the most out of his length. He would allow defenders routinely in college to get into his chest, which I think took away his best asset. There were also question marks about his strength, because at times he didn't do enough to drive defenders out of run lanes. Brandon Parker also had a narrow base in college, making him susceptible to defenders using inside counters on him. But seeing an offensive lineman that could develop into a starter, the Raiders selected Brandon Parker in the 2018 NFL Draft in round 3 with pick 1. As a rookie in 2018, he was named the starting right tackle in week 5 after Penn was injured. In 2019, Parker would start in 3 games, in 2020, 4, and in 2021, Parker once again would return to the starting lineup, starting 14 games. During the following year, in 2022, he sustained a tricep injury that would keep him out the entire year. Brandon Parker, reflecting on this injury though, said it actually helped him improve as a player as it gave him another offseason to essentially refine his craft. After tearing his tricep, he was able to return to the field in 2023, but he primarily served as a backup. So now, the real question is, what type of player has Brandon Parker actually become in the NFL? And let me be honest with you, if this is the only outside move 49ers are making at tackle, it's really concerning how little 49ers care to invest in their offensive line. Parker might be an upgrade over a guy like Jalen Moore, but he's definitely not a league starter. Perhaps my biggest concern with the Niners' current starter Colt McKivitz is his pass protection, but honestly, I think Parker might be worse. When we're watching the most recent year from Parker's film, for instance, I want to focus on how he's lackluster in his hand usage, and then his base is pretty narrow, which allows him to get driven back into the quarterback. Outside of a couple plays this year though, Parker really wasn't on the field that much, so I'm going to be focusing on his 2021 season for the remainder of his video, and I think he continued to struggle, much like his college days, to use his length to his advantage. On this play specifically, I think he could have done a better job timing up his pop with Joey Bosa's rush, and then once he got inside, extend his arms more than just kind of lunge at him. Another area of concern that became evident on the field was hand placement. Here, for instance, he's all over this defender's face mask and neck, and while he escaped the penalty on that play, it only took him a little bit longer to draw one. So while Brandon Parker does have the size you want in a tackle, he just struggles to translate that size on the NFL field, where he routinely plays smaller than he actually is. But there are times in which Parker is able to bring out his size to his advantage. And now moving over to San Francisco's offensive line, he's going to be working with a guy like Chris Forrester, who's gotten a lot out of a guy like Jake Brendel, who many didn't think could be an effective NFL starter. And when you watch a play like this, you can see how Brandon Parker's physical attributes flash on the field. So maybe if Chris Forrester understands how to utilize him a little bit better than the Raiders, he could be more effective. A way in which he could be better with San Francisco is the utilization of more play action passes that get him out there and attacking defensive linemen, because he's not the best at anchoring. I do think Parker plays in nicely to what San Francisco wants to do in the run game though, because as well as showing off athleticism, he shows off an ability to drive guys back. And like he did in college, making his way up to the second level isn't really that big of a problem. I would like to see him engage a little bit more, but I do like his movement out in space. While this is better than his pass protection, I still think his run blocking is far from a starter's level in my opinion. This signing is great if it's just for depth, but my major concern is Kyle Shanahan thinks this is enough. Because last year, this is basically what they had moving into the year, so therefore he could argue, okay, I want to take a defensive tackle because we've just lost Eric Armstead, and we even had this offensive line last year and it was good enough to go all the way to the Super Bowl, which would further perpetuate the cycle of pushing back the investment in the offensive line into later rounds in hopes of Chris Forrester making something out of nothing. But ultimately, these are just my thoughts on the signing of Brandon Parker, and I'd like to hear your thoughts down below. It would also mean a ton to me if you liked and subscribed, and as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.